So I wanted to share a story with you. This is our story here on our 0th birthday. This was January 3rd, you see here on 2023. So a little over a year ago today, when GE Healthcare split off from the greater GE organization as an independent company. For those that haven't looked at the news recently, in the last couple of years, GE did split into healthcare, aviation, and Vernova, which is energy, three separate companies. And this was an exciting day, as you can clearly see from the executive leadership in the picture, a lot of celebration, a lot of fun to be had. However, a lot of work got us to this point, and we've done a lot of work since this point to really like see the opportunity as a specifically healthcare company. So as we became independent, we had this great opportunity to say, okay, now we are 100% healthcare focused. What is our responsibility to our customers, to the patients that they serve, and our role in this greater world that we work in? And I'll stay here and share a story with you. Let's see. So this was let's back up about 5 months from the time of this picture to summer 2022. We were in the an event space in the top of a hotel in Chicago. All the top leadership of GE Healthcare, and our then president and CEO, Larry Culp, stood up in front of us and he said to us something along the lines of this. He said, "You are about to be the captains of this ship. You are about to be the founders of one of the biggest startups of all time with a 130-year history, $18 billion worth of revenue, and 50,000 employees." And then he said something along the lines of, I have faith in you. This is the right time. This is the right team. Some really wonderful, positive things. But as one of the attendees or leaders in that room, I can tell you that myself and probably everybody else thought, eek, this is a really big responsibility and one that we should probably get right? And to give you a sense of how big that responsibility truly is, the company has nearly $20 billion of revenue and all the responsibility that we have to our shareholders for it. We serve over 1 billion patients every year with our products and technologies. We have 50,000 employees. We have an install base of equipment of over 4 million. We have business in over 160 countries across the globe and manufacturing facilities and offices across the globe, across all cultures. So you can imagine the opportunity is big, but also the responsibility is quite big and to many different stakeholders. So how did we go about this? So we said, first, we need like a North Star, right? Like, what is our ultimate goal? What is our place in this world as an organization? And we need this kind of shared purpose. And so I'll pause there on the GE story and share a different story with you about shared purpose. And apologies if you've heard this one already, but I like it. Also, don't even know if it's true, but I still like it. In 1961, as the story goes, the US President John F. Kennedy was visiting NASA, our space organization. And, he was doing presidential stuff, shaking the top cadre's hands, learning how engineers and scientists helped with our space science programs. And as he and his entourage are coming through the halls of NASA, he runs across a man who's mopping the floor. And he says, "Hi, nice to meet you," shakes his hand. "I'm President Kennedy." Man says, "Nice to meet you. I'm Bob," or whatever his name was. And President Kennedy says to the man, "What is it you do here at NASA?" And the man said, "Well, I'm sending a man to the moon." So was mopping floors literally sending a man to the moon? As far as that employee was concerned, absolutely, right? So when he woke up that morning, he wasn't thinking, "Oh gosh, I got to mop more floors for another paycheck." He was thinking, it's really critical that I keep the floors of NASA clean in order for the engineers to work with the scientists in order to send a man to the moon. So he understood how his role in the organization had a greater purpose and the greater shared purpose of the organization that he worked in. So that's the standard we were setting for ourselves, a point where every one of the 50,000 employees truly believes in, owns, and really lives the purpose of our organization. So we did release a purpose. In this case, I just want to represent myself right. I did not author the purpose. I think it's brilliant. I think a team of individuals got together in a room and with market intel and all the psychological magicalness that these individuals had to create a purpose, but the words really put into like meaning the essence of GE Healthcare and where we want to go as a company and where we see our place in this greater world and our impact in this greater world. So the purpose statement that they gave unto us, you know, as a department leader, leading research and scientific affairs, I have a responsibility to percolate that purpose to others, is this: create a world where healthcare has no limits. So I hope you can see how this can inspire employees to get up in the morning. Frankly, it did for me. I had a 5:30 a.m. call with colleagues in Egypt, Dubai, and Wisconsin. It wasn't fun to wake up at 5 a.m., but it certainly helps to feel like we're really doing something important here. We're really doing something real. So, and I trust my colleagues to ask me to wake up at 5:30 for something important, and it was. So this is something that can inspire and excite stockholders. What are they investing in when they invest in a company like GE Healthcare? And it aligns with our customers and the patients that they serve, who frankly were like, finally, we knew that you had it in you, GE Healthcare, to be this bold. Okay, so now I've got as a department leader, I've got a role where I need to actually cascade that message in a way that my employees and my employees' employees and all the individual contributors really believe in this purpose and that they are a part of this purpose. So how do we do that? Well, as you likely know, Albert Mabrian, a behavioral psychologist at UCLA, go Bruins, showed us that 55% of what we communicate as humans when we're communicating with each other is nonverbal. So nonverbal would be like body language, for example. 38% of what we communicate is our voice or our tone, and a mere 7% of what we think we're communicating to another human is the actual spoken words that we are speaking. So take that and imagine if our CEO and president, Peter Arduini, took this beautiful purpose that had been created for us and just stuck it in an email to all 50,000 employees. Hey, our name's pretty much staying the same, but we're capitalizing the C. The C in care is important, believe me. The color's purple now. We're going to call it compassion purple because we care about patients, la-di-da. And our purpose is going to be create a world where healthcare has no limits. Can you imagine how that would resonate with employees that are several levels below that CEO? It wouldn't be the way to message it, right? And it's certainly not how it was messaged in our case. So the idea is you really have to get to a point where that entire cascaded staff, all of those employees are really disciples of, or like kind of stewards of that message, really living it and believing in it and being proud to be a part of that general purpose. And we did that through a lot of different activities that I'll share with you. But most importantly, it's not about like the cookbook. I will show you the cookbook, but it's not about like the cookbook of what we did, but more how we did and what we sort of embraced as a greater company. So in his book, The Speed of Trust, I think it's called, right? Stephen Covey talks about trust in an organization being the fastest way to change culture, to get things done, to change messaging, et cetera. And so we really embraced a change in culture as this new, bolder, healthcare-focused organization. And changing culture is, of course, in an organization, one of the hardest things to do. Building a culture of trust looks like establishing open and transparent lines of communication, encouraging a culture of psychological safety where employees feel valued and heard, recognizing and rewarding trustworthiness and collaborative efforts, and engaging and empowering employees. So we were focused deeply on this cultural change. And I know there are audience members here sitting back and going, wait, hold on, this is GE. I've read Jack Welch's book. Is this really the type of culture change of trust and growth mindset? Is that not necessarily what I read in the Jack Welch era. There was some great things about the Jack Welch era. I, of course, read it also as a business student. There were some great things about the Jack Welch era, but also some things that definitely would not work in today's area of business and style of business. So we kind of tried to take the good, keep the good, and change what we were ready to change in this world. So that stuffy suits, boardrooms, focus obsessively on shareholders is no longer the focus. What you'll see now is our leadership on the road every day, on the ground, at hospitals meeting with customers, at factories, meeting with employees, and directly hearing the voice of the stakeholders of this organization. We call it going to Gemba. We can do a whole nother presentation on Gemba, but we're not going to do that today. So what is that? That's leaders leading by example, demonstrating their commitment to this new purpose themselves, and then their leaders will do the same. And there's just a general sense of we do this together. We're in this together. Part of that comes down to engaging and empowering employees. So on day one, on that January 3rd, when we spun off, every single one of the 50,000 employees received a congratulations. You are now one of the 50,000 founders of GE Healthcare. We put forth a substantial campaign and strategy to create this sort of founders mindset, which is engaging and empowering employees through this culture of trust that we work so hard and continue to work hard to establish and maintain. There was a tangible representation of ownership. Everyone got kind of a founder's coin that represents that they were there on the day that we found this company together. There were, of course, and you won't be surprised to hear, structured and planned meetings, town halls, but a key part of those town halls, even up to the top executive level, is that open questions are welcome, even the tough questions, and the team doesn't shy away from tackling and answering those tough questions. Why have we done what we've done? Why have we made changes that we've made? Changes are not done in a vacuum. There's clear visibility to all employees of where we're going and why, and just a sense of ownership. You're part of this company, you're part of the responsibility of this company, and does every employee really understand their role? Okay, I promised a bit of a cookbook. This is it, just one slide of cookbookness. So if you think about the ways we communicate, if you've gotten to a point of really establishing culture and trust across your organization, you're then ready to focus on that 7% of the actual words. Like, what is the message we actually want to share? How can we get to a point where every employee can say, I'm clear on my priorities, they align with our global company's purpose, and I understand how. Do I make choices every day as if I were an owner of GE Healthcare? Great. So we do this with a strategic framework. Strategic framework includes purpose, which we've talked quite a bit about. Your cultural and operating principles, which I skipped over a bit. So I said we worked on culture, but we also actually defined our culture with each other and reward each other as we demonstrate our cultural behaviors. And then strategic focus, because it's not just about why we work, which is purpose, or how we work, which is culture and operating principles, but of course also what we work on. So if the organization as a whole can present the strategic focus to all employees, then we as employees have the opportunity to build priorities that we know are working towards that strategic focus. And strategic focus is usually like in the next 3 to 5 years. So where purpose and cultural operating principles are lasting, in some cases as much as hundreds of years, strategic focus is something that may change over time and pivot as markets, goals, and company initiatives change. So once you've got that strategic framework to rely on, and once it's really clear with all of the organization, we can look at priorities. Now, the key to priorities is that the individual contributor or the most junior employee in the company has priorities that actually support up and up and up and up to the level where when the CEO is reviewing how his departments are performing, he can actually see in some way, even if it's a little way, something that employee did to contribute to the greater good of the overall organization. And so we actually cascade priorities down throughout the organization so that the support, the KPIs, the performance indicators of each employee rolls back up to the top level of the goals of the organization. We have actually published our strategic framework publicly, so I'm able to share it with you here. So as you see, here's our purpose: create a world where healthcare has no limits. Our strategic pillars are precision care, growth acceleration, and business optimization. And then our cultural principles: serving our people, patients, and customers, leading with a lean mindset. We love lean here at GE. Empowering entrepreneurial spirit. It means if you're walking through the hallways and you see a crumpled up piece of paper on the ground, you pick it up because this is your company and you make sure it makes its way into recycling. deliver the future of healthcare, and of course, win together and have fun. So yes, that is actually part of our requirement as our cultural principles and operating principles, and we're proud to have that as one of them. Okay, so what does this look like when it's working? Everyone, down to the most junior employee, is clear on how their priorities and goals support the greater company purpose and strategy. We cascade down the priorities so that we can roll up the output. We can roll up the KPIs or the performance towards the same goal. So why do we do this? Because in good times, it enables us to have nimble, fast, and efficient decision-making power. And in bad times, we have some compass by which to make tough decisions. Looks like we have a few minutes for a really fast example. I was hoping we would. So this is not a GE example. It's a Johnson & Johnson example, but I love it. In this case, and it was nicely described in Daniel Coyle's book of Culture Code. In 1943, Robert Wood Johnson, the former chairman and founding member of J&J, developed a credo, or a statement of values and beliefs, which composed 311 words that represented the company's values. Founded in 1943, the credo is not only a part of the company culture, but it's even plastered on the walls. There's a big block of granite outside that shares the company credo. Now, fast forward to 1975, the then president of J&J, James Burke, summoned 35 of his top company leadership because he did not believe that they cared about the credo or really considered it in their day-to-day. So he sat them down, took out a big whiteboard, and basically said, you are in a position to be able to change this document, which is the soul of this corporation. If you can't live by its principles, we ought to tear it off the walls and change it. After a lot of debate about the values that they wanted to represent as a company, the leadership team agreed that the credo was the best representation of the values they strived for. So they kept the credo, and those leaders held that same workshop with their leaders, who held that same workshop with their leaders, who held that same workshop with their individual contributor employees. And the credo begins with this: we believe our first responsibility is to patients, doctors, and nurses, to mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. Well, it's a good thing that Mr. Burke did this, because in 1982, only a few years later, these values were really put to the test, when 6 individuals in Chicago died from consuming extra strength Tylenol. Panic ensued, as you can imagine, as the company raced to figure out the issue and find a solution. Turns out the product had been contaminated with cyanide, but only in a very specific region of Chicago. The FBI and the FDA, who were investigating the event, recommended back to Johnson & Johnson that they only recall product in that specific area where the issue had been recognized. But J&J easily, with strength in their credo, looked back at their values, looked back at their goals, and said, nope, we're going to recall all 31 million bottles nationwide. And it's a decision that cost them what today would be the equivalent of about $3 billion. So you can imagine this did impact their stock, but it wasn't actually their primary value that was in their credo. It's a tough decision to make. And they then reinvented tamper-proof packaging, which is standard today, and spent even more money to release a massive campaign on public safety. Over the next few months only, the company's stock slowly began to rise again, and eventually the company made a full recovery. And I'm guessing many of you, we certainly do have Tylenol in your house because it's a trusted brand. So they had a strong shared sense of purpose. They enabled the organization to make swift and impactful decisions in a crisis. If a team shares the sense of purpose, we have it shapes the identity of the organization. We can move faster. We can all move in the same direction. And this company culture around trust and focus on the same end goal helps all individual employees not only love the job that they're doing and feel like they're impactful, but also work towards the end company goal. So with that, I'll say thank you so much for your time.